this is Marianne, and for the next hour I will be reading articles from the February 2026 issue of the Buffalo Latino Village on the Niagara Frontier Radio reading service. First article, Why I Ran for Buffalo Board of Education, West District, by Talia Rodriguez. I was born on Buffalo's Lower West Side, the heart of our city's Puerto Rican Latino community. My family and community shaped my values of service, perseverance, and community care. When I won, I became the first Puerto Rican and the only Latina representative on the Buffalo Board of Education. Our voices deserved a seat at the table, especially when the district's budget exceeded $1 billion. I earned my law degree from the University at Buffalo School of Law and completed a one-year internship at the United States Supreme Court, where I focused on combating human trafficking and violence against women. That experience deepened my commitment to trauma-informed, survivor-centered approaches and to ensuring that public institutions protect and uplift every community. For more than a decade, I worked to close opportunity gaps and uplift Buffalo's students. Through roles at Say Yes Buffalo, Buffalo State University, and the West Side Promise neighborhood, I built programs that served thousands of families. I helped launch Buffalo Public Schools Saturday Academy, develop the community school model, and establish food pantries and expanded summer meal programs so no child had to learn on an empty stomach. I also created real-world learning opportunities such as the Lafayette High School Student Business Competition and connected schools to local businesses, labor unions, and higher education to prepare students for life after graduation. When I ran, my priorities were clear: strengthen public education and student achievement through culturally responsive teaching, responsible budgeting, and genuine public engagement, promote educational innovation and workforce readiness to ensure that Buffalo public schools remain a competitive option for families, emphasize a health equity-based approach, expand wraparound services for students year-round, and champion restorative and compassionate practices in place of suspensions, especially for students struggling outside of school. Address gaps in bilingual and multilingual education so that language was never a barrier to success. Improve school safety through collaborative, trauma-informed, restorative practices. Celebrate student success and build positive school cultures that empowered young people while promoting Buffalo Public Schools as an excellent choice for families. Buffalo Public Schools West District was the most diverse in our city, yet graduation rates, attendance, and proficiency remained too low, especially for Latino and Black students. We knew we could do better. With community support, we aimed to create schools that prepared our children for the future, honored their culture, and supported their full potential. I ran because I believed every child in every neighborhood deserved a high-quality public education and the opportunity to thrive. As promised, together, we will build a school system that truly serves all of us. Page 3. Otro hito para la artista puertorriqueña y residente de Buffalo, Angeli Vargas, por Dianis Román Rodríguez. La artista puertorriqueña Angeli Vargas, radicada en Buffalo, alcanzó un importante hito con el lanzamiento de un libro infantil que ilustró por completo en colaboración con una autora de su pueblo en Puerto Rico. El proyecto tiene un profundo significado cultural y comunitario, reflejando la herencia compartida que inspiró su creación, El libro bilingüe, disponible en inglés y español, narra la historia de las trillizas nietas del rey Melchor, quienes aprenden valores como la cortesía, la buena educación y el agradecimiento. Dirigido a lectores jóvenes, el libro promueve principios esenciales mediante una narrativa accesible y atractiva. Vargas desarrolló un estilo visual distintivo, combinando fondos detallados con una paleta de colores armoniosas para reforzar el tono emocional de la historia. Cada ilustración fue creada para aportar profundidad, contexto e imaginación, ampliando el mensaje del libro a través de imágenes vibrantes. Este proyecto reafirma mi compromiso con crear arte con propósito, especialmente para la niñez y para las comunidades que nos formaron, expresó Angeli Vargas. La edición bilingüe amplía el alcance del libro y fortalece la creciente presencia de Vargas en el ámbito editorial infantil. Actualmente trabaja en su próximo proyecto, la ilustración de una portada para SM Puerto Rico como parte de El Barco de Vapor, serie roja. Vargas presentó recientemente el libro a los estudiantes de la Escuela Pública de Buffalo número 3, acompañada por la subdirectora M. Fierstein y la autora Maricruz Rivera Clemente, marcando un momento de celebración para la comunidad escolar y para la representación latina en la literatura infantil. Próximo artículo, Feliz Día de la Amistad, por Angélica Aquino. Uno de los regalos más preciados que podemos tener es la amistad. La amistad nos une, nos motiva y nos conecta con el universo, la naturaleza y nuestra humanidad. Quien tiene un buen amigo es una persona dichosa. La amistad es una de las bases del amor universal e incondicional. En este mes que celebramos el Día del Amor en todas sus expresiones, quiero de todo corazón darle las gracias a cada uno de mis amigos y a todos los que aportan en Buffalo Latino Village. Y por supuesto a cada persona quien contribuye con su apoyo al éxito de nuestra publicación. Gracias por el amor y el apoyo. Les dedico este poema escrito por Pablo Neruda. Amigo, llévate lo que tú quieras. Penetra tu mirada en los rincones. Y si así lo deseas, yo te doy mi alma entera, con sus blancas avenidas y sus canciones. Amigo, con la tarde haz que se vaya este inútil y viejo deseo de vencer. Bebe de mi cántaro si tienes sed. Amigo, con la tarde haz que se vaya este deseo mío de que todo el rosal me pertenezca. Amigo, si tienes hambre, come de mi pan. Todo, amigo, lo he hecho para ti. Todo esto que sin mirar verás en mi estancia desnuda, todo esto que se eleva por los muros derechos, como mi corazón, siempre buscando altura. Te sonríes, amigo, ¿qué importa? Nadie sabe entregar en las manos lo que se esconde adentro. Pero yo te doy mi alma, ánfora de mieles suaves, y todo te lo doy, menos aquel recuerdo, que en mi heredad vacía aquel amor perdido es una rosa blanca que se abre en el silencio. Página 4. Un momento justo por la paz. What does this moment require of you? By Virginia Ross. We find ourselves in an alarming moment, both worse than ever and at the same time, painfully familiar. White supremacy persists. Power and corruption continue to oppress BIPOC communities and other marginalized groups. Wealth and influence concentrate in fewer hands, and we witness increasingly brazen lawlessness and government-sponsored violence, including the diversion of public resources away from people's needs and into the pockets of billionaires. Many are newly outraged and frightened, while just as many are saying, "Welcome to my world. This is how it has always been for us." So what does this moment demand of each of us? What are we called to do? Some of you have heard me speak about my father, who at 15 years old, Jewish, in Munich, 1933, refused to say Heil Hitler when accepting a prize in front of his entire school. He fought the leader of the Hitler Youth. He whistled a different tune when classmates sang Nazi songs. He kept putting his hands back in his pockets as others tried to force them out. Eventually, he was told he had better leave or they would take care of him. So he left for then Palestine. That is a story for another day. Others resisted in quieter ways without the same visibility or immediate danger. There are countless ways to build toward the future we all deserve, but stepping outside our comfort zones is often essential, and it is urgently needed now. Now is the time. We each have different abilities, responsibilities, and circumstances. There is no single prescription for what this moment requires except this: listen to and learn from those most heavily impacted and help in the ways we can. No one can do everything, but everyone can do something. Call your elected official every day, email them, show up in the streets, join a rapid response group, report if you have seen ICE or other immigration agents like Border Patrol, Homeland Security, etc. Offer childcare, meals, or financial support. Talk with neighbors, family, friends, even strangers. There are so many ways to help, and there is no hierarchy of roles. We are all needed. Silence equals complicity, and failing to act strengthens the rise of fascism. Howard Zinn reminded us, you cannot be neutral on a moving train, and this train is headed in a direction that should make all of us shake our heads. May we push ourselves forward for the common good, for peace and justice, at home and abroad. May we listen, learn, discern our roles, stay grounded, and work together for the beloved community. Please engage in the activism and support opportunities you will find throughout our stellar Buffalo Latino Village, and visit wnypeace.org, especially the community calendar, to discover more ways to get involved. Finally, join us to hear Buffalo Latino Village's own Eri Alvarado speak on Stop Militarizing the Caribbean at the WNYPC's next Latin America Solidarity Committee Peace Coffee House on Monday, February the 23rd at 7 p.m. at Canisius University Science Hall. Next article, Why Dominican Carnival is More Than a Festival. It is a Declaration of Identity, by Eri Alvarado. Every February, the Dominican Republic transforms streets filled with color, drums, costumes, smoke, laughter, and movement as El Carnaval Dominicano unfolds across the country. From the mountains of La Vega to the coastal streets of Santo Domingo, Santiago, Bonao, Puerto Plata, and countless towns in between, Dominicans of all ages and backgrounds take to the streets, some in elaborate costumes, others as spectators, all in to participate in what is the single largest and most meaningful cultural celebration in the nation. Festivities begin on the first Sunday of February and continues every Sunday of the month, culminating on February the 27th, Dominican Independence Day. And it is no accident that these two traditions are bound together. Carnival is not just entertainment, but a ritual of memory, resistance, identity, and collective belonging. To understand Dominican Carnival is to understand Dominican history. The tradition blends African, Taino, and Spanish influences into something uniquely Dominicano. Masked figures, vibrant colors, Music and satire trace their roots to colonial times when our enslaved Africans and indigenous people used performance, disguise, and mockery as a form of expression in a society that denied them power. Over generations, El Carnaval evolved into a cultural space where Dominicans could invert hierarchies, ridicule authority, honor ancestral traditions, and reclaim joy in the face of hardship. At the heart of Carnaval are the Diablos Cojuelos, mischievous devil figures cracking whips, dancing through crowds, and commanding attention. They are symbols of irreverence, resilience, and survival, representing the refusal to be silent, submissive, or erased. In La Vega, often considered the birthplace of Dominican Carnival, the Diablos wear towering horned masks and ornate suites covered in bells, mirrors, and sequins. In Santiago, the tradition is marked by refined costumes and organized comparsas. In the capital, El Carnaval becomes a massive national procession. In Puerto Plata, we pay homage to our Taino roots with Taimascaros. Each region expresses the same cultural soul through its own aesthetic language, uniting the island in participation. Carnival erases social boundaries between wealthy and the poor, the young and the old, rural villagers and urban professionals all occupy the same streets. There are no VIP sections for identity, there is no hierarchy of belonging, and everyone is Dominican first. That is what makes Carnival sacred. It is not staged for tourists, even when tourists attend. Instead, it is staged for Dominicans themselves, for their children, ancestors, neighborhoods, and their collective memory. It is where Dominicans rehearse who they are and who they have always been. The culmination on Independence Day is deeply symbolic to the Dominican Republic as it represents us gaining independence from Haiti in 1844 after centuries of Spanish colonization and a brief period of Haitian rule. That history is complicated, painful, and politically charged, yet El Carnival doesn't erase those tensions. It helps process them through music, custom, and ritualized chaos. El Carnaval becomes a public act of survival, telling the world we are still here, still Dominican, and still belonging to ourselves. For Dominicans in the diaspora, including thousands in Buffalo and Western New York, our celebrations carry even deeper meaning because they become a bridge to home, a reminder that identity is not something that dissolves at a border crossing, but it lives in rhythm, memory, food, language, and ritual. When Dominican communities recreate our customs abroad, we are not just throwing a party, refusing erasure, and teaching our children that Dominican culture is not an accessory, but our lineage. In a world that constantly pressures immigrants and their descendants to assimilate, El Carnaval Dominicano stands as an act of cultural defiance, loudly, joyfully, and unapologetic. Every February, Dominicans everywhere remind everyone that their history is not something to hide, it is something to always be celebrated. Next article, Investing in Ourselves, Step Out Like Eddie by Virginia McIntyre. Please join me as I continue my series on women in history and contemporary society. Mary Baker Eddy, born in 1821 and passed away in 1910, the founder and leader of the Christian Science movement, was born on July 16, 1821 at Bow near Concord, New Hampshire, USA. She was the youngest of the 6 children of Mark Baker and Abigail Ambrose Baker. In 1843, Mary Baker married Major George W. Glover, a native of Concord, New Hampshire, but a resident of Charleston, South Carolina. By occupation, a contractor and builder, his business extended to adjoining states and to the island of Haiti. Major Glover died 6 months after their marriage while they were at Wilmington, North Carolina, pursuant to his business. Her only child, also named George W. Glover, was born 3 months later, after she had returned to New Hampshire. During the next 9 years, she lived in Tilton, New Hampshire, with her father or with her sister, Mrs. Abigail Tilton, and occupied herself to the extent allowed by delicate health in caring for her child and in teaching. In 1853, Mrs. Glover married Dr. Daniel Patterson of Franklin, New Hampshire, a dentist. After they moved to Lynn, Massachusetts in 1863, he became unfaithful to her and finally deserted her. Therefore, in 1873, she obtained a divorce for his desertion resulting from his infidelity. In 1877, Mrs. Glover married Asa Gilbert Eddy of Lynn, an ardent Christian Scientist and one of the first of her followers to engage in the public practice of Christian Science. After his death at Boston in 1882, Mrs. Eddy continued as a widow until she died. As a child and as a young woman, Mrs. Eddy showed an exceptional interest in religious subjects. In the development of his interest, she was aided by her devout and intelligent mother, as well as by congregational pastors and by other ministers whom her parents frequently entertained. At the age of 12, she had the courage and independence to dispute a point in theology when she was examined for church membership. Between then and her first marriage, she often discussed religious topics with her parents and with ministers, exhibiting a comprehension which they regarded as remarkable. Shortly before her first marriage, one of her pastors, who also tutored her for 6 or 7 years, Reverend Enoch Corser, predicted for Mrs. Eddy a great future and spoke of her as an intellectual and spiritual genius. Page 5. Apoyo para la familia Rodríguez tras trágico incendio fatal en Buffalo. La familia Rodríguez enfrenta una tragedia inimaginable tras un devastador incendio en su hogar el pasado mes en Buffalo. El incendio cobró la vida de 2 niños pequeños y las mascotas de la familia. Destruyó su casa y dejó a varios miembros gravemente heridos. José Rodríguez, su esposa Jocelyn Moana Rodríguez y una de sus hijas fueron trasladados a la unidad de cuidados intensivos con heridas que ponen en riesgo sus vidas. 2 niños adicionales sobrevivieron y actualmente están seguros con familiares. El 14 de enero de 2026, Jocelyn Moana Rodríguez falleció trágicamente debido a las heridas sufridas en el incendio. Le sobreviven su esposo José Rodríguez y sus hijos. En tan solo unas semanas, el señor Rodríguez ha sufrido la pérdida de su esposa, sus 2 hijos y su hogar familiar. Ahora enfrenta una recuperación larga y difícil, mientras cuida a sus hijos sobrevivientes y trabaja para reconstruir sus vidas. La familia Rodríguez necesita urgentemente el apoyo de la comunidad para ayudar a cubrir gastos médicos, costos funerarios, vivienda de emergencia, ropa y otras necesidades esenciales durante este tiempo crítico. Los familiares y defensores comunitarios solicitan oraciones y cualquier ayuda que el público pueda ofrecer. Las donaciones y el apoyo material se pueden entregar a 170 Congress Street, Buffalo, New York, 14213. Se anima a los miembros de la comunidad a compartir esta información ampliamente para ayudar a crear conciencia y apoyo para la familia Rodríguez, mientras comienzan el largo proceso de sanación y recuperación. Para oraciones, donaciones o consultas sobre apoyo, la familia pide al público que los mantenga en sus pensamientos durante este tiempo de profunda pérdida. Next article, Cultural Exchange, Enhancing Cultural Roots Impacting Buffalo, by Beatriz Flores, Director of El Batey Puerto Rican Center. Conversations about Buffalo's future often focus on economic growth, workforce development, and civic engagement. At El Batey Puerto Rican Center, we see those goals come to life through a powerful pathway, culturally grounded youth leadership. We work diligently by investing in Buffalo's future, keeping young people engaged in positive ways. At El Batey Puerto Rican Center, we see that future taking shape in a very real way through young people who are deeply rooted in culture and committed to giving back to the city that is watching them grow up. In the month of March, El Batey will take 16 Puerto Rican youth from Buffalo on our 4th annual cultural exchange to Puerto Rico, where they will represent our city at the 14th Encuentro de Tambores, one of Puerto Rico's most respected folkloric music gatherings. These students will attend not as tourists, but as performers, learners, and cultural ambassadors, dancers, percussionists, and singers, fully trained and educated right here in Buffalo. Among them, Oviel Davida and Aquila Lugo Dones have been specially recognized for their achievements in percussion and bomba dance. Oviel, as lead percussionist of the diaspora delegation led by Ibelis Diaz, in a lifelong cultural worker and leader, and Aquila Dones will be highlighted as a bomba dancer. Their participation highlights El Batey's role in cultivating local talent, preserving Puerto Rican culture, and creating transformative opportunities for youth. This exchange strengthens Buffalo's arts economy, cultural identity, and youth leadership pipeline. This trip is not about traveling alone, it is about capacity building. When these young people return home, they bring back more than memories. They return with sharpened skills, confidence, discipline, and a deeper sense of responsibility to their community. They teach younger students. They perform in schools and public spaces. They support cultural events that bring families together and activate neighborhoods. In practical terms, this means stronger community programs, increased public engagement, and a growing pool of young leaders who understand that culture is something you practice, protect, and pass on. Too often, cultural education is treated as supplemental. In reality, it is an essential infrastructure of the culture. It builds collaboration, public speaking, accountability, and leadership. It strengthens identity and belonging, critical factors that help young people stay engaged, motivated, and connected to their city. It also supports Buffalo's creative economy, which depends on trained artists, educators, and cultural bearers. Call to action: how to support this initiative. El Batey Puerto Rican Center is raising funds to support its 14th annual Youth Cultural Exchange to Puerto Rico. Contributions help cover travel, lodging, meals, and cultural education for Buffalo-based youth serving as cultural ambassadors. To donate by mail, the mailing address is El Batey, Inc., P.O. Box 275, Buffalo, New York 14213, or you may contact 716-348-0156. This was a summary of the article. Next announcement. Rebeca necesita un riñón. Hola a todos. Algunos de ustedes ya saben esto, pero muchos no. Hace aproximadamente 2 años me diagnosticaron con enfermedad renal en etapa 3. Después de 2 biopsias, supe que tengo nefropatía por IgA hace unos 5 meses. Mi condición progresó a etapa 5, insuficiencia renal terminal. El pasado mes me sometí a una cirugía para colocar un catéter de diálisis peritoneal para poder comenzar a hacer diálisis en casa. Ha sido un capítulo difícil e inesperado en mi vida. Ninguno de nosotros lo vio venir, pero mi familia ha sido increíblemente solidaria. Mi esposo aún está procesando todo y mi hijo Joe ha sido increíble. Solo quiere que su mamá mejore. Tuve mi primera cita con el equipo de trasplantes en ECMC y todo se sintió mucho más real. Sé que esto es un gran pedido, pero si usted o alguien que conoce consideraría convertirse en donante vivo, ya sea para mí o para alguien más que lucha contra esta enfermedad, estaría eternamente agradecida. He incluido información a continuación para cualquiera que quiera aprender más o dar los primeros pasos. Gracias a todos de antemano por su apoyo, sus oraciones y su amabilidad. Que todos se mantengan saludables y bendecidos. Rebecca is a mom of one and looks for a kidney donor. To be a kidney donor, please call ECMC 716-898-4931. Page 6. Let us gather in a flourishing way. Una entrevista con Andrea Álvarez por Dianis Román Rodríguez. Como parte de Arte con Alma, tuve el placer de conversar con Andrea Álvarez, curadora latina cuyo trabajo se centra en la representación, la diáspora y la creación de espacios inclusivos dentro de las instituciones museísticas. Andrea es originaria de Ecuador y reside en Buffalo desde 2017. Su trayectoria académica incluye estudios en Virginia y su familia vive en Miami, Florida. Estas experiencias personales influyen profundamente en su visión curatorial y su entendimiento de la diáspora. Andrea presentará la exposición Let Us Gather in a Flourishing Way en el Buffalo AKG Art Museum con apertura el 6 de marzo, una muestra que destaca la riqueza y complejidad de la pintura contemporánea Latinx. ¿Qué inspiró Let Us Gather in a Flourishing Way y cuáles fueron las ideas centrales que guiaron la exposición? Andrea explica que en el centro de su práctica está la convicción de que los museos deben reflejar el mundo real, la diversidad que vemos en nuestras comunidades y no solo a las personas que históricamente han sido representadas en estos espacios. Su objetivo es visibilizar a la población global, con un énfasis especial en la diáspora latinoamericana y caribeña, así como en las comunidades Latinx que viven, trabajan y crean cultura en los Estados Unidos. A través de esta exposición busca presentar una cultura que merece ser vista, conocida y valorada más allá de estereotipos. ¿Cómo amplía o cuestiona esta exposición las narrativas tradicionales de la pintura contemporánea? En lugar de presentar el arte Latinx desde un solo marco, la exposición abraza la multiplicidad. Andrea recalca que la comunidad Latinx es profundamente compleja y diversa. Los artistas participantes reflejan esta realidad a través de una amplia variedad de estilos, desde la abstracción hasta el retrato. Cada obra representa una voz única, del mismo modo que cada persona posee su propia historia, origen e identidad. ¿Cómo aborda la exposición los temas de diáspora, identidad y sentido de pertenencia? Andrea comparte que esta muestra no está rígida únicamente a la comunidad Latinx de Buffalo, sino también a personas de otras diásporas que pueden sentirse ni de aquí ni de allá. La exposición crea un espacio de identificación para quienes han experimentado migración, desplazamiento o la construcción de un nuevo hogar en otro país, convirtiéndose en un lenguaje común de entendimiento. ¿Qué espera que el público se lleve de esta exposición? Andrea espera que el público comprenda que la comunidad Latinx no es homogénea, no todas las personas comparten el mismo idioma, tradiciones o experiencias, y esa diversidad merece ser celebrada. La exhibición invita a ver a los artistas más allá de etiquetas culturales y a reconocer la profundidad y singularidad de cada obra. Como curadora latina, ¿qué significa para usted liderar un proyecto de esta magnitud? Andrea describe este proyecto como un privilegio inmenso, trabajar de cerca con los artistas, honrar sus pasiones, valores y visiones, y traer ese trabajo al Buffalo AKG Art Museum y eventualmente a otros museos es profundamente significativo. Aunque las colecciones toman tiempo en transformarse, las exhibiciones permiten crear visibilidad y abrir puertas. ¿Qué consejo le daría a artistas y curadores Latinx emergentes? Andrea enfatiza que el mundo del arte se construye a través de relaciones, pasión y amor por el trabajo. Es un camino que no se puede recorrer en soledad. Recomienda buscar oportunidades laborales en museos para aprender su funcionamiento desde distintas áreas, ya que estar cerca del arte ayuda a mantener vivo el flujo creativo. You are listening to a reading of articles and features from the Buffalo Latino Village on the Niagara Frontier Radio reading service. Next article, Does Talia Rodriguez School Board Victory Change Anything in Buffalo? By Eddie Alvarado. Talia Rodriguez's election to the Buffalo School Board is being hailed as a breakthrough. It marks a visible step forward for Latino representation in a city where political power has long been distributed along rigid racial and neighborhood lines, and in that narrow sense, her win is meaningful. But Buffalo's political history suggests the harder question of, does representation alone change outcomes? Must be asked. Buffalo remains one of the most segregated cities in the country, with roughly 85% of the city's black population living east of Main Street. Latino communities are concentrated on the west side, while white political influence remains anchored in South Buffalo and surrounding suburban networks. These are not just demographic facts, they are the scaffolding of political power. In Buffalo, neighborhoods function as political blocks where tumult is mobilized through churches, civic organizations, party clubs, and long-standing broker networks. Funding, endorsements, and institutional support are distributed through those same channels. The result is a system where visibility for marginalized communities often increases faster than their actual control over resources and decision-making. That history matters when assessing if Rodriguez's election really means. School boards in cities like Buffalo are not independent power centers. They operate within tight financial and political constraints shaped by state funding formulas, mayoral influence, union contracts, tax-based disparities, and development-driven enrollment shifts. A single board member, even a well-prepared and principled one, doesn't gain automatic leverage over budgets, contracts, or policy direction. That means presence is not the same as power, a relevant distinction for Latino representation. Buffalo's public political face of Latino leadership has historically been Puerto Rican, reflecting the city's largest Latino population. Dominican, Central American, South American, and Afro-Latino communities have been far less visible in formal political structures, an imbalance that isn't just cultural but reflects how the institutional density of communities with long-standing civic organizations, nonprofits, and party pipelines are absorbed into the system faster than newer or less resourced groups. Rodriguez's election breaks a representational ceiling, but whether it breaks a structural one remains an open question. Buffalo has a long track record of symbolic inclusion paired with institutional continuity. The city has had a black mayor, has elected Latino council members, yet those changes have not prevented the continued concentration of investment downtown, persistent underfunding of East Side schools, or development policies that displace families while shrinking enrollment in neighborhood classrooms. The danger is not that Rodriguez will fail, the danger is that her presence will be used to signal progress without shifting the underlying political logic that governs school funding and educational priorities. Her real impact will depend on how she uses her seat. If she follows the familiar script, using cautious language, quiet backdoor negotiations, deference to district bureaucracy, and avoidance of conflict with mayoral or developer-aligned interests, then her role will likely become symbolic. Her image will be cited as proof that Buffalo is changing, even if the same schools remain under-resourced and the same communities remain marginalized. If, on the other hand, she takes a more confrontational approach by publicly naming funding disparities, demanding transparent budget reallocation, aligning with East Side Black leadership, challenging enrollment shifts driven by displacement, and building coalitions across segregated neighborhoods, then her election could become something more than ceremonial and could become a pressure point in a city too accustomed to optics without real challenge. Buffalo doesn't change simply because new individuals enter institutions. It changes when institutions are forced to respond to organized cross-neighborhood power. Rodriguez's election matters only if it becomes a catalyst for that kind of pressure. Otherwise, it risks becoming another entry in Buffalo's long list of historic firsts that made people feel seen without changing what students experience in their classrooms. Symbolism opens doors, but only power keeps them open. Page 8, As I See It, Before the Big Storm, by Alberto O. Capas. This is a very serious moment in our country. This is no time for relaxation or distraction. People continue with their usual American routines, going to the movies, cheering at football and basketball games, counting down to the Super Bowl and March Madness, all while taking no time to recognize the storm forming right in front of us. Local and national media talk, debate, and speculate only to cut to commercials and return to jokes and laughter as if nothing is happening. Religious institutions and former U.S. presidents remain largely silent, unwilling and unable to speak loudly and forcefully about the crisis unfolding under this administration. We are drowning in ignorance, division, and racism. These are not normal times. Many believe that the current president is dismantling not only the foundations of American democracy, but also destabilizing the world around us. This is no longer about us versus them. We are all in this together, whether we want to be or not. Our local, state, and national leaders must come together, think creatively, and treat this situation with the seriousness it demands. Meanwhile, our new mayor is preoccupied with balancing the budget, yet still finds room to create 4 deputy mayor positions, a decision that raises questions about priorities at a time when leadership should be laser-focused on stability and unity. Our elected and civil leaders should be meeting, planning, and developing strategies to confront what many see as a political crisis threatening the nation's future. Instead, we are leaving it to community activists to plan and organize rallies and protests against Trump and his immigration enforcement policies, while too many elected officials and civic leaders remain silent, absent, or unwilling to raise their voices on behalf of the people. We are already living just a few miles from the edge of authoritarianism. Many fear a president who appears eager to expand his power far beyond constitutional limits. The midterm elections mean nothing to him if he can undermine or delay them. If he has a plan to disrupt the democratic process, then we must have a stronger plan to protect it and to hold every responsible party fully accountable. Perhaps Senator Mark Kelly, with his reputation, discipline, and military experience, can help bring clarity and courage to the leaders of the armed services. Someone must step forward before the storm reaches your doorstep, because by then it may be too late. And here in Buffalo, we must raise our voices, channel our anger into purpose, and build a broad, powerful platform to ensure that Donald Trump, along with our state and national elected officials, hears our concerns loud and clear. Page 9 has an announcement. There is an event on Monday, February the 23rd, 2026 at 7 p.m. Peace Coffee House Speaker Series featuring Eri Alvarado. The presentation title is Stop Militarizing the Caribbean. The location will be the Peace Coffee House at Canisius University Science Hall, Main Street off Delavan Avenue, Buffalo, New York. Next is a poem by Jessica Miguelina Amezquita titled Libérame. Dios, libérame. Libera a mis hijos y a mis hijas. Libera mi familia, libera mi tierra. No solo a las playas y los bosques de República Dominicana, Puerto Rico y Haití, pero a los seres humanos de Sudán, de la República Democrática del Congo, de Palestina, Líbano, Venezuela y de México. Libera al mundo entero, entero por dentro. Libera a los niños que están sufriendo. Libera de estos sistemas que nos matan, como dicen los mexicanos, al chingado a los magas. Y como dicen los dominicanos, esos tigres están pasados. Esos tigres están pasados. Dios, libéranos. El espíritu mío sabe que aunque muchos dicen que estamos en nuestros últimos días, yo sé que tú tienes un gran plan de paz, amor y liberación espiritual. Libérame. Miro hacia el cielo y veo los químicos que nos matan, hasta la migra los tiran en las caras. Todos los días se sienten más y más difíciles, como el hielo frío, y si no te deportas te meten en la caja de hielo. Te dan un bote de agua y un pedazo de pan. Y si eres mujer y tienes tu periodo, hasta te dejan sangrando. No te ayudan con ropa limpia, nos tratan hasta peor que animales. Dios, libera a nuestros seres humanos. Necesitan paz. Libéranos de los trastornos de la salud mental. Dios nos ayuda a salir. Te llamo a ti para la paz mundial. Libérame. Page 10. Puerto Ricans must invest in Puerto Rico to protect the island from foreign gentrification by Alberto O. Capas. Alberto O. Capas, author and co-publisher of both Buffalo Latino Village and the East Harlem Journal, is calling on accomplished Puerto Ricans across the diaspora to unite in forming a Puerto Rican Investment Council. The purpose of this council is to acquire property on the island, an essential strategy for safeguarding Puerto Rico's future and preserving its cultural heritage, amid growing concerns about non-Puerto Ricans purchasing significant portions of the land. Capas stresses the importance of mobilizing middle-income Puerto Ricans to join this effort. Your contributions, no matter how small, are vital to our collective success, he argues. The initiative will begin by engaging local, state, and national legislators and leaders who can help connect the movement with prominent celebrities and entrepreneurs, expanding its reach and strengthening its impact. As a proud middle-class Boricua, Capas is committed to investing whatever he can to help protect Puerto Rico. He believes that, united, Puerto Ricans can build a powerful force for preservation, empowerment, and long-term stability. Capas encouraged everyone to share this message widely so it reaches Boricuas everywhere, especially statewide and national leadership. Felix Leo Campos, chair of the La Fortaleza project, which sponsors the annual Festival del Libro and co-publisher of the East Harlem Journal, also emphasized the need for Puerto Ricans on the mainland to take a serious interest in the political and economic issues unfolding in their homeland. For more information, latinovillage1@gmail.com. Next article. Did you know about Luis Muñoz Marín, Pan, Tierra y Libertad? By Alberto O. Capas. Luis Muñoz Marín, elected in 1948, became the first democratically chosen by United States governor of Puerto Rico and one of the most influential figures in the island's modern history. A former journalist and founder of the Popular Democratic Party, he shifted from early pro-independence view to championing a political partnership with the United States, ultimately shaping the creation of the Commonwealth in 1952. His administration, which lasted until 1965, launched sweeping social and economic reforms, most notably the Operation Bootstrap, that transformed Puerto Rico's economy and global profile. The meaning behind Governor Luis Muñoz Marín's quote, Pan, Tierra y Libertad. The phrase Pan, Tierra y Libertad translates to bread, land, and freedom. It was a political slogan Muñoz Marín used during the 1930s and 40s, and it reflected three major goals for Puerto Rico's working class. The bread symbolized economic security, jobs, food stability, and a better quality of life for Puerto Rican families. The land represented land reform. He fought against the large sugar corporations that controlled most of the land, promoted the land redistribution program, so Puerto Rican farmers could own land and move out of extreme poverty. Freedom meant political and social freedom, including greater self-government for Puerto Rico, freedom from exploitation by U.S. corporations, and civil rights and democratic reforms. Libertad was not a call for independence, as many believed, but a call for dignity and basic rights. Where did Luis Muñoz Marín live in New York City? Luis Muñoz Marín lived in Greenwich Village, Manhattan, during the 1920s and early 1930s. Commonly referenced addresses include 88 Grove Street, Greenwich Village, frequently mentioned in biographies. He spent time around the village literary and political circles, mingling with activists, writers, and poets. This neighborhood influenced his political and literary ideas. Was he a poet or a writer? Yes, absolutely. Before becoming Puerto Rico's first elected governor, Muñoz Marín wrote poetry during his time in New York. His early works showed political and emotional depth, influenced by the Harlem Renaissance and Bohemian village culture. A journalist and essayist, wrote extensively for Puerto Rican and U.S. newspapers and magazines, and he founded political publications and used writing to advocate for reform. A political thinker, his speeches, essays, and legislative writings helped shape modern Puerto Rico. Many historians describe him as a writer first, a politician second. Luis Muñoz Marín became a controversial figure during Puerto Rico's struggle for independence. Although he was admired by many Puerto Ricans and supported by the United States, which maneuvered politically to position him as the island's first Puerto Rican governor, his legacy remains debated. Many political scholars argue that the slogan Pan, Tierra y Libertad was originally crafted as a strategic pathway toward independence. Pan referred to economic development and the creation of financial institutions capable of uplifting the people. Tierra emphasized land ownership in the hands of Puerto Ricans themselves. Libertad pointed toward the long-term aspiration of a free and sovereign nation, no longer a colony of the United States. Within this interpretation, the concept of Commonwealth was intended as a transitional structure, one that would stabilize and protect Puerto Rico until its people were prepared to move toward full independence. Next article, Victoria, What a Heroic Last Stand Looks Like, by Pierre Wallon. On December the 14th, 2012, Victoria Leigh Soto went to work like any other day. She was 27 years old, a first-grade teacher at Sandy Hook Elementary School in Newton, Connecticut. By the end of the morning, she would be gone. Her students would be alive because of her. When the shooter entered the school, Victoria immediately understood what was happening. She did not freeze. She did not run. She acted. She gathered her students, ushering them into a classroom closet and bathroom area, hiding them as quickly and quietly as she could. Then she placed herself between the children and the door. When the gunman burst into her room and demanded to know where the students were, she lied. She told him they were in the gym. He didn't believe her. He shot her 11 times. Despite her injuries, her actions brought the children precious seconds. Every student in her classroom survived. Victoria did not. First responders later found her near the doorway, positioned where she had tried to block his path. The children she had protected waited silently where she had told them to stay. After her death, stories emerged about the kind of teacher she had been. She saved her own money to buy books for her students. She often spoke of wanting to be the teacher she needed as a child. She believed deeply that children came first, always, no matter the cost. Her family described her as gentle, joyful, and fiercely protective. Victoria Soto did not carry a weapon. She had no training for violence. What she had was instinct, responsibility, and love. In a few seconds, she made a choice that cost her everything and saved others everything. In 2013, she was posthumously awarded the Presidential Citizens Medal. Schools, scholarships, and foundations now bear her name. But her truest monument is invisible. The ordinary lives being lived today by the children who walked out of that classroom because one teacher stood in the way. She did not survive, but they did. There is an announcement on page 11. El Departamento de Transporte del Estado de Nueva York necesita su opinión sobre el futuro de la autopista NYS Ruta 33. Será el jueves 5 de febrero de 5 a 7 de la noche en el Centro para Personas Mayores de Amherst, en el 370 John James Audubon Parkway en Amherst. Es la sesión informativa pública número 4 para compilar las opiniones de la comunidad para definir una nueva visión para la autopista NYS Route 33, Ruta 33. Los temas claves que se abordarán incluirán tráfico y tiempo de viaje, espacios verdes y parques, paseantes y ciclistas, economía, tránsito, salud y seguridad. You have been listening to a reading of articles and features from the February 2026 issue of the Buffalo Latino Village. Your reader has been Mary Ann. Thank you for listening.